So, David Flores, could you talk about which place brought you the most symbolic insight to the story of Christ in your trip with JVP? So, my trip to Jerusalem, one of the things that gave me the insight was walking up the Mount of Olives, I think. And then, because when you go up the Mount of Olives, you see Jerusalem. It's kind of higher up, and you kind of see Jerusalem down there. Yeah, and realizing that these are all hills, like all these things are hills, and that the Temple Mount is a hill, that the temple was on a hill. It was that the Holy of Holies was actually on the summit of a hill, and that the temple is literally a mountain. It's like I kind of knew before, because I knew that the Muslim shrine that's on the Temple Mount had the raw, like the rock, the foundation stone inside of it. But it's like when you see it, when you're in the space and you see, it's like Jerusalem's on a hill, and then you have the Mount of Olives on a hill, and you realize that like when Christ goes to Gethsemane up into the Mount of Olives, he's actually going into the Garden of Eden, and some of the things that happen in Gethsemane are little a version of what's going to happen at the crucifixion. And then you're like, oh, okay, so Christ ends up going up the mountain. Like I had made a video about it while I was there. I'm going to put it out in the next 2 weeks. But Christ goes up into the garden and leaves the disciples behind, very much like Moses leaves the Israelites behind as he goes up the mountain. Now he's going into the garden, but it's also a mountain. And then, but when he gets into the mountain to the garden, it's like he's saying, I don't want to eat the fruit. And that's what he's saying to God. He's saying, I don't want the cup. But I think what that means is he's saying, I don't want to eat the fruit if I can avoid it. But if your will is that I eat the fruit, then I will. And it's like, so he's basically eating the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil out of submission to God rather than out of pride. And because of that, then the rock that's in the garden becomes the ladder to heaven. It says that an angel came down to console him. And so it's like, yeah, you realize like all that imagery is there, and then he sweats blood. It's like the sweating of blood, I think, is referring directly to the blood and the water that came out of his side on the cross. And so it's like a little microcosm of what's going to happen, because some of the elements of what's going to happen in the crucifixion, obviously Golgotha is not a garden. But it's like if you see it together, you realize that it's all being compressed. And so it's like right before Christ goes into a garden, and then everything that happens there is like a mini version of what's going to happen at the crucifixion. And that's why at the crucifixion, when they give him the vinegar on the cross, it's referring to the Gethsemane when he said, I don't, it's like if I have to drink that bitter cup. And so it's like it's all connected together. And it's like a little microcosm of what's happening. And it's like when I was there, that's when it all kind of hit me. And I saw just how amazing the story was again. It's like every time I just get smacked by that story. So that's really what just like it hit me really hard. Yeah, I would definitely suggest for anybody to go to Jerusalem if you can. Obviously, it's expensive and it's getting more expensive, but if you can do it, it's worth it, because being in the space does something to you. I don't know.